Number three, why storytelling? We need to establish credibility faster and deeper. Our jobs are changing, our roles are changing, the world is changing, but what's not changing is the need to establish credibility. And we need to establish credibility really quick, really fast, right? And very often I ask people, how many times have you been asked this innocent question at a networking forum? And these days in the virtual setup, there's so many networking forums. I recently attended a networking forum on this brilliant platform called Zuddle, where you can kind of get into breakout rooms as if you're actually attending an event, and you can exchange your LinkedIn profiles. It's pretty cool. So I suddenly found myself in a room with four strangers, right, from the HR community, my potential clients. And when you find yourself in a situation like that, one of the most innocent questions that people would ask you when they meet you for the first time would be what? What's the innocent question that people ask you? Give me in the chat window. When they meet you at an event, at a networking forum like this, what are some of the questions that may come your way? Imagine a forum where you're having coffee with somebody looks at you and says, what do you do? There you go, Asta. Absolutely, a very innocent question. Somebody will go look at me and say, hey, Gatik, okay, I see on your name it says trainer, or I don't see that. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Now, the moment somebody asks us this innocent question, what do you do? Now, here's the problem. This question, what do you do, or tell me a little bit about yourself, we're all hardwired. We're all hardwired, because where have we heard this question most often? Tell me something about yourself. What do you do? Where have we heard this question most often? Come on, give me in the chat window. Interviews, that is right. What do you do? Tell me about yourself. हम सब ने ये सवाल interviews में सुना है. Some of us 3 times, some of us 30 times, whatever the case be, right? And therefore, when we're in a networking forum where the objective is completely different, and you're in a completely different space, but somebody asks you, so what do you do? Tell me about yourself. You'd say, well, I'm in with the advisory services, and I've been there for the last 8 years, and I manage this function. And prior to that, I was with for about 8 years. And before that, I started my career actually with where I was, in the tax side of things, in the indirect tax, and that's where I did about 4 years. Pura resume hum suna dete hain usko, right? Some people will go back to their MBA also. And what was the question asked? What do you do, or tell me something about yourself? Now, that innocent question is an opportunity for you to build resonance with that person. The way I try to introduce myself with an intent to create a connection, create some relatedness. Why is it going to help me if you relate to me? Because it's going to be easier for me to convey some of my messages to you, isn't it? But we feel that's the only opportunity where somebody is asked, what do I do? Ki sab kuch udhar hi suna dena humne, right? So those are opportunities to tell stories, to tell what is called pattern number 2, who am I, or your genesis story, or your backstory. And these can be short 30-second stories as well. When somebody says, who are you? What do you do? Tell me about yourself. Do you have a story for that? Right? And I often tell people to have a 2-minute story, a 4-minute story, and a 7-minute story ready. 3 different stories with 3 different key messages, telling about 3 different things about you. Ready always, because a storyteller needs to have stories. Stories are not going to fall in your lap. We've got to craft stories and be ready to tell the stories, right? So that's reason number 3. Reason number 4 and 5 coming up real quick for you. What's reason number 4? Convincing people that this will work. Stories help to convince people this will work. I'm going to flip to the next slide and talk to you about why that happens, because stories can literally suspend disbelief. And I'll give you a very important data point from neuroscience to establish that fact, that stories can literally suspend disbelief. It can make the unreal appear real. Actually, our politicians do that pretty well. So stories, we already know, can suspend disbelief, sometimes in the wrong way, but we've got to use it right. And finally, people forget the value of what you share, but stories stick better than charts or slides. Stories stick better than charts or slides. You know why? Let me ask you this question. Ready in the chat window. How many of you have ever been in a situation where, hopefully before the lockdown and all was there, or after the lockdown goes over? So think back before the lockdown times. Imagine you're walking down in a mall, and as you walk down in a mall, you bump into somebody that you know. You've seen that person, you've seen this person after a long time, you recognize the face and you meet other, oh, kya haal hai yaar, arey, long time, man, what's up, what are you up to? And you have this quick chat, but you're in a hurry, the person is in a hurry, you go your own ways. And the moment the person leaves, you're to yourself, yaar, iska naam kya hai yaar? What's her name? What's his name? How many of you have experienced this? You remember the faces, but you forget the names. How many of you experienced that? Karan says yes. Harpreet says yes. SP says yes. Very, very, very often, several times. And here's the reason for that. Our brain is wired to retain visuals longer, far longer than text. Our brain is wired to retain visuals far longer than it retains text, which is why we remember faces and we forget names. Now, storytelling, the established rule number 1, is a visual process. You remember that? It's a visual experience, and because it's a visual experience, it stays longer. The experience, my introduction story, you may forget a lot that I share with you in this workshop, in this masterclass, but my story, you're likely to retain longer than anything else. Mark's story of Malaysia, you'll retain longer. Vikram's Just Imagine story, mobile app company, you'll retain longer. And that's the power of why stories are so powerful. I was telling you about neuroscience. I'll tell you what makes stories so powerful from a neuroscience perspective. So this is recent advancement in medical science. When I say recent, about 15 years old, we now have very, very accurate brain MRIs. You all know what brain MRIs are, brain scans are. Those are for the uninitiated. If you've seen in the movies, a person is sitting, a lot of wires attached to the brain, connected to the computer screen, lines going up and down. So today, with a very high level of accuracy, scientists, medical professionals can diagnose what's happening in the brain when you give an input, what part of the brain gets wired up. The heat maps, what area is going red, what area is going yellow, all of that happens, right? Brain MRIs. Now, brain is broadly divided into 8 regions. Many, many more, but broadly divided into 8 regions. And we now have conclusive evidence that when a person receives information, imagine a person sitting with all those wires on the screen, when a person receives information in form of data, so somebody's talking data or just showing data, it activates 2 out of the 8 regions of the brain, okay? Including the prefrontal cortex, our thinking side. But when a person receives information in form of a story, it activates as many as 7 out of the 8 regions of the brain. 7 out of the 8 regions of the brain get activated, including a central area, the Broca's region of our brain also, which is responsible for movement. 7 regions get activated and multiple chemicals get released in the body, including oxytocins. How else do you explain it? Let me give you an example to illustrate this happens. How many of you have ever seen a movie with a high-speed car chase? Give me a yes there. Give me a yes. Fast and Furious or something like that, right? You've seen, right? If you've seen an action movie, it probably has a high-speed car chase in any case, right? So imagine you're sitting at home in this large, home theater room of yours, large television. You're sitting comfortably on this recliner. You're watching this movie, high-speed car chase. The car swerves and you're watching it. Suddenly the car swerves left in the screen. And as the car swerves left, you go, yes or no? How many of you agree with that? Give me a yes if you agree with that. When you swerve, when you see the car swerve, why do you do that? You know you are not in the car, but your body behaves as if you're in the car. How else do you explain it when you, more than automatic reflexes, Preeti? You're right, automatic reflexes, but a little bit more than automatic reflexes. I'll explain. How else do you explain it when you see an ad for a burger or a pizza on a television screen? What happens? Now, these guys are smart. They know how to tell a story behind a burger and a pizza. Right? How do they show a burger ad? The way they show, started getting hungry. The way they show a burger ad is first the bun will fall, right? Then on that, a nice aloo tikki or a chicken patty will fall. On that, a fresh, crispy leaf of lettuce with droplets of water. On that, one red, nicely sliced tomato, fresh, absolutely red. And on that, you squeeze that white mayo they show. Then another bun falls on top. 2 hands come and squish it, and the mayo is, dripping out. And the person comes and picks it up and takes a huge bite. How do you feel? Your mouth starts salivating. Yes or no? Give me a yes if that happens when you watch an ad, right? Why does that happen? Because the logical part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, is telling you that is not real. It is not real. But the Broca's region, the other parts of your brain tell, shut up, we are taking over. That's the impact of the psychology on the physiology. Stories have a huge impact on the psychology and therefore the physiology of people. It can change the way your body language moves. It can change the way you think. It can change the way people think. All the greatest politicians who've ever had campaign speeches, that's a lot of storytelling. And they use pattern number 7, which is leading people into the future. Yes, we can is an example of leading people into the future. Achhe din aayenge is an example of leading people into the future, right? So all of these are examples of leading people into the future. And stories can help you create the connection between psychology and physiology. That's why extremely, extremely powerful.